Welcome to this short video which will teach you how to properly keep score on APA League Night. The weekly 8-ball score sheet is what you will use to keep score of all matches played. After League Night, your score sheet will be submitted to your local APA League in whatever manner they have instructed. The score sheet will ensure that both you and your opponent's members will be properly ranked. It's important that the score sheet be filled out neatly, completely, and correctly, and then signed by both team captains. Penalties will be assessed for repeated illegible, incomplete, or incorrect score sheets. On this score sheet, Joe Jones, a skill level 7, and Steve Smith, a skill level 5, have been selected to play each other. Skill levels are listed here on the score sheet. Now, let's look at how to properly fill out a score sheet. After the coin toss, it is decided which team must declare the first player. Then place that team's number, in this case Joe Jones's team, in the space provided. This will help you remember which team chooses first in the remaining matches. For the remaining matches, the teams will alternate who puts up the first player. Next, let's look at the player information. To help determine which player breaks and which player racks the balls for the first game, the two players lag. To lag, each player takes a ball from the rack, puts it behind the second diamond on the table, and hits it so that it banks off the far rail and rolls back towards the cushion closest to the players. The ball that is closest to the cushion determines the winner. This person breaks first and is listed at the top. In this example, Steve won the lag. So you would list Steve's team number, last name and first initial, player number from team roster, and the number of games Steve must win. Now do the same for Steve's opponent, Joe. To find out how many games Joe and Steve must win, see the Games Must Win chart shown here. The roster says Steve is a 5 and Joe is a 7, so it will be a 3-5 race. Now let's look at the innings and timeouts section. An inning in pool is a completed cycle that gives both players a turn at the table. The player who won the lag, in this case Steve, is listed first and is the top half of the inning throughout the match. The player who lost the lag, in this case Joe, is the bottom half of the inning throughout the match. Since Joe lost the lag, he ends each inning. An inning is not over and therefore not marked until the player who lost the lag, Joe, misses or fouls. The games blocks. There are separate boxes for each game. Enter the number of innings for each game here. Next, indicate who won the game by darkening either the upper block or lower block on the right-hand side of each game box. Upper when the player listed first wins, in this case Steve, or lower if his opponent wins, in this case Joe. Gameplay will bring about various other scenarios that need to be declared on the score sheet as well. If a player accidentally pockets the 8-ball, it's called an early 8. If this happens, write E8 in the game block. If a player sinks the cue ball while trying to pocket the 8-ball, commonly known as a scratch, you would write 8S. If a player pockets the 8-ball in the wrong pocket, you will write 8WP. If a player pockets the 8-ball when breaking the rack of balls at the beginning of a game, known as an 8 on the break, you would write 8OB. And lastly, if a player breaks the balls and then pockets all of their balls in succession and the 8-ball ending that game, this is known as a break and run. You write BR. If a player breaks and runs a rack, the inning is not over yet. This is because technically they are still shooting in the next game. Mark a 0 for the game they just won in the game box and understand that they are now shooting in the next game but still in the same inning. An inning is never marked until the second player, the one who lost the lag and who was also in the bottom half of the inning throughout the entire match, misses or fouls. An inning is not over at the end of the match unless the bottom player loses the match on his final shot. Let's go through a couple of examples to help better understand this concept. For example 1, Steve wins the lag, breaks, pockets 2 balls and then misses the third. Joe then pockets 5 balls and misses the 6th. You mark in the game block 1, 1 inning. Steve then pockets 1 ball and then misses. Joe then finishes pocketing his remaining balls and the 8 ball, winning the game. However, since Joe has not completed his second turn at the table, the second inning has not yet been completed. Joe then breaks to begin the second game, but doesn't pocket a ball. The inning is now over because Joe has completed his turn at the table. You would now mark in game block 2, 1 inning. In the second example, Steve breaks and doesn't pocket any balls. Joe, who is a 7, then runs all of his balls in all of his games between him and Steve without missing. Technically, the inning is still not over because Joe never completed his turn at the table. In this case, you would mark a 0 on the score sheet in each game block. Another scenario that happens frequently and that needs to be written on the score sheet is when a player calls for a coaching timeout. When a team takes a timeout, simply mark a T in the corners of the games block. The upper 2 for Steve, the player listed first, or the lower 2 for his opponent Joe, listed second. Always mark the first timeout on the left of the games block. The total innings block. Add up all of the innings for the entire match and enter the total in the total innings block shown here. 8 on the break and 8 break and run blocks. Use the appropriate blocks to mark the total 8 balls pocketed on the break, 8 break, and the total of all break and runs, 8 B and run, for each player in the appropriate blocks here. The defensive shots block. Intentionally missed shots are indicated in the defensive shots block. A defensive shot should be marked for a player who has no intention of actually pocketing their ball on any given shot. In this illustration, Joe had 2 defensive shots and Steve had 5. At the end of the match, write the total number of defensive shots and circle the number. Intentionally missed shots fall into 2 basic categories. The first category is safeties. Safeties are perfectly ethical, but are intentional misses nonetheless. The second category is intentionally missed shots for the purpose of manipulating one's handicap, also referred to as sandbagging. By carefully marking intentionally missed shots, you are not only keeping score properly, you are also helping to ensure the accuracy of the skill levels of the other players in your division. Note, the marking of a defensive shot does not affect the marking of the inning. In other words, the inning is marked and so is the defensive shot, if appropriate. Accurate and conscientious scorekeeping is the team captain's greatest contribution to the smooth operation of the equalizer handicap system and the prevention of sandbagging. The equalizer will work perfectly if every team keeps score properly. Anytime a player does not attempt to pocket one of his object balls, it should be marked in the player's defensive shots block. The only way a team can get away with manipulating the equalizer handicap system is if you let them. The score block. The total number of games won by each player is recorded in the score block. As shown here, Joe won 5 games and Steve won 1. The win-loss block. Indicate who won or lost each match with a W or L in the WL block. Here, Joe won, as indicated by the W. Now, let's take a look at the fees section. Team captain should complete the financial section, located in the lower left portion of the score sheet shown here. Make sure that you always itemize the money which is placed in the envelope with the score sheet. It is very important to list annual membership dues with the names of the members who are paying. Team captain's signature block. A team earns 1 point every time one of their players wins a match. So when your team match is over, add up the total number of wins for each team shown in the WL block. Record the total number of points earned by your team here at the end of your team captain's signature line. Then sign both score sheets. Table size section. Finally, be sure to check the box indicating which size table the match was played on. Your local league management processes the score sheets you submit. You improve the league and your chances of winning by playing by the rules in the spirit of the rules and by keeping score according to the book. Your cooperation will be appreciated by your teammates, your fellow members, your local management, and the APA.